If you have ordered something to be delivered to your home, there are now warnings to watch out that your parcel isn't nicked by crooks who've cottoned on to the fact that parcels are being left in porches or outbuildings if the occupants are out, even to the extent, right, of following the delivery vans around. Well, one piece of research using Freedom of Information requests suggests the number of parcels stolen in this way has risen by nearly 60% in the last year. Now, I've been speaking to Gary Winter from the parcel technology company Quadient, who conducted the research, and I asked him about this research they found.
So we've been looking very carefully at parcel theft and the effect that Black Friday and the run-up to Christmas has on it. I mean, one of the industry phrases we use is porch piracy. It's a gift from the US, which, along with Black Friday, is another gift they've given us.
And what did you find?
Well, we find that, in particular, there seems to be an uptick in the number of parcels that are stolen around this time of year. I think there are kind of a couple of reasons for that. There's a long-term trend going back a number of years from before the pandemic, where each year there is a higher incidence of parcel theft than the year before. But also, around this time of year, there's a particular concentration. In fact, about a quarter of all the parcels that are stolen every year are stolen in November and December.
It's clearly, very concerning and would leave people feeling unnerved as well.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, I think there's a number of reasons why it's happened. There's kind of, they say opportunity sort of creates criminals. So when things are left carelessly, whether it's on the front step, without any kind of disguising or not hidden under property, that kind of would create opportunity thieves, if you like. You see something lying by the side of the road and it might tempt somebody to pick it up. But there's also people that are more organised. There are really, really sad reports of people following delivery vans around and potentially attacking them and taking parcels in bulk. The typical delivery driver at this time of year might have anything from 120 to maybe even 200 parcels in the back of their van. And with the high inflation we've got and the high cost of goods and the sort of, the hit in people's incomes, it can be very, very tempting. So
these are being targeted without them even being left on the porches, on the doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately that's very rare, but the theft of the doorstep is far too common, and I think there are probably some steps that people can take to try to mitigate that. I'm definitely not saying that consumers or customers are responsible for these crimes, but helping to prevent them is a big part of what possibly we all can do.
These criminals have clearly cottoned on to the fact that parcels are being left unattended. I know how easy it is if you're not going to be in to say, just leave it on my porch, it'll be absolutely fine, I'll be home before too long. So you kind of touched on this, talking about what people can do to try and prevent it.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One is, I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but when you order something, try to make the delivery day when you're likely to be home. So if you're really worried about something, or you're expecting something, but that maybe it's got slightly more expensive than you would normally buy, then sometimes choosing next day delivery and making sure that you're going to be home that following day, can really, just a simple step like that could mitigate the chance of it being left. The other thing, there are a couple of other things you can do in conjunction with the driver, actually. The drivers are normally really lovely people. They're normally somebody from your own community that's, working part-time to make a living. If you meet them and greet them and just sort of have a word and say, look, this is a really good place just here to leave it. It's out of sight. I'll know that it's here when you come back. Then, building that relationship can be really helpful. And the third thing is some of the carriers have got really good apps now. So you can download their app and you can set a series of preferences in the app. So you might say, for example, if I'm not in, please go to number 34. Or if I'm not in, please put it, round the back where my bike is lent on the wall or whatever it happens to be. But you can put those preferences in via the app. And when the delivery driver comes to your house and you're not in, then their handheld device, which they all carry now, these electronic handheld devices, PDAs we call them, will give them a message and tell them what to do. So I think when they're struggling for somewhere to leave it and they're under a lot of pressure to deliver a lot of parcels in a short period of time, unfortunately some of the more creative strategies for delivery aren't particularly successful.
What is the kind of policy in terms of the companies and their responsibility? If a parcel is misplaced, and you mentioned like creative ways that they're left, who is culpable then? Is it up to the company to clamp down on this more?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a chain of custody. So when you place your order and the retailer dispatches your item, they hand it off to the carrier, and the carrier is responsible for it until it gets to your hands. So if you can demonstrate that they've behaved in a way that is, outside of their terms and conditions, i.e. leaving something in plain sight, and it is stolen, then they are definitely responsible. So I would, they've all got a claims form on their website. Sometimes that's quicker than trying to phone them on customer service, particularly this time of year when nearly every call centre in the world is saying, I'm sorry, but we're having more busy than normal. They are responsible for replacing it. Now, again, sometimes the terms and conditions will have a cap. There'll be a maximum that they'll be liable for. So if you do, for example, send an expensive gift through the carrier, make sure you have got adequate insurance. Sometimes it's capped at £20. You might send a £100 box of Lego to your nephew, and if it does go missing, you will only be able to recover £20 of it unless you get adequate cover. So being really careful and just checking the terms and conditions, and then you'll be quite comfortable that you are protected.
Okay, I mean, just thinking about the different housing makeup that we have, do you find in your research that presumably people who live in blocks of flats or, terraced homes, high density urban areas, are they more likely to be targeted by this, or does that kind of not matter?
No, it does matter, because it's much, much harder to find a safe place. It's if you are in a flat, and you've got just the frontage of your property facing onto the street or onto a walkway, then you've almost got no choice, no opportunity to give a safe place. And maybe you don't know your neighbour very well as a strategy. I mean, then what you could do is possibly use one of the out-of-home locations that the carriers offer. It's an industry term. We call it out-of-home delivery. So instead of having the parcel come to your house, well, just don't have it sent to maybe a local shop or a parcel locker, where they'll be held securely until you're able to pick them up. There are over 20,000 out-of-home delivery points across all the carriers in the UK, and most people probably live pretty close to one, and that's a really good alternative to taking that slight chance of having home delivery and missing it.
And it's a shame, isn't it? Because I know a lot of people who are offline, they don't have access to the internet. It's these kind of schemes that they hear of which makes them even more reluctant to purchase from different businesses online. It kind of fuels that fire, really.
Yeah, we are one of the most prolific online shopping countries in the world. I mean, in terms of the percentage of population, the number of deliveries per person per year, we are right at the top of the tree. Only the US has a bigger e-commerce industry than us, but then they have 4 times the population. What happened over COVID, interestingly, was many more people were kind of compelled to shop online that hadn't done it before, or they were compelled to shop in categories that maybe they hadn't shopped before. So maybe you bought your clothes online, but you did, your sort of health and beauty products by trip to the high street. You couldn't go to the high street, or you weren't comfortable, so people moved online. So there was a massive uptick in volume during COVID. And now that volume has dropped a little bit, but there are lots and lots of people shopping now that weren't shopping maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and that's putting big demand on the carrier industry.
Interesting. So what is the policy of the delivery companies then? Should they be leaving them if nobody's in?
No, I think there's probably a gap in some of the carriers where you're meant to, if you can't deliver it home to the person in the home, then you need to leave it somewhere safe and clearly out of sight. So I don't think any of the carriers, and I've worked at a couple of the carriers, we would never endorse, if you're under pressure, just leave it, it will be fine. It's definitely not the case. So there could be a training gap and possibly an experience gap. I don't know if you've seen, Anna, that the Royal Mail and other big parcel organisations are recruiting thousands of temporary workers in the run-up to Christmas. And they are clearly not going to be as experienced as the people that come to your house every day. So maybe they'll be slightly more, as I said before, creative in where they try to leave your parcel just through lack of experience or lack of training.
And you were absolutely not allowed to leave a parcel in a bin, are you?
I've had it happen to me.
Okay.
I've had to empty my wheelie bin out into the snow to find my wife's Christmas present that was buried at the bottom. Now, luckily, it was not bin collection day, and it wasn't on the side of the street. But there are too many stories of this happening, and it might seem very, very appealing as a safe place to put it, but it absolutely, definitely isn't.
So, Gary, if you could give us, say, 5 top tips that we can take away from this interview. You know, a lot of us will have made Black Friday purchases. We've got Cyber Monday coming up. It's the busiest time of the year for online shopping, I'm presuming. If you could give us 5 top tips that we can take away with us today and then can prevent us, this happening to us at all, what would you say? What would you give us?
5 is a lot of pressure, and I'll do my best. So I would definitely try to, and it's the most ridiculous one, try to place your order when you're more likely to be in, so decrease the chance of it being abandoned. Secondly, if you can't do that, or the delivery promise is not as definite as it needs to be, sometimes it says 3 to 5 days, and that you can't really plan around that, then think about an out-of-home location. Have it sent to a parcel locker, have it sent to we call them PUDO stores, a pick-up drop-off store, a local convenience store. We'll probably take it in and go and pick it up when it is convenient to do it. I would talk to your delivery drivers when you see them. They're very, very busy. They won't have a lot of time to talk to you, but tell them what your preferences are, and try to think about, encouraging them to use a safe space. I would download the apps from the delivery companies that come to you most often and put in there what your preference is. And the other one is this time of year it's always very nice to talk to your neighbour. Go and knock on your neighbour and say, if I do have a delivery coming and I'm not in, would you mind taking the parcel in for me? And I'll be happy to do the same for you. Quite often the driver will look around to try to find a neighbour's house where they can deliver it. And we're one of the most sociable countries in Europe for doing that, actually. We've got one of the highest percentages of leaving a parcel with a neighbour. So there's the 5 top things that I would definitely think about.
Very interesting. Thank you to Gary Winter from the parcel technology company Quadient. Lots of stories today about your delivery nightmares.